Tonight we are looking at a development that could dramatically alter the course of the war in Ukraine. The weapon at the center of this story is the Tomahawk cruise missile. It is a name many have heard before, often associated with American military power. But what exactly is it? A Tomahawk is a long-range, subsonic cruise missile. Think of it as a small, unmanned jet aircraft with a warhead. It is launched from ships' submarines and flies low to the ground, hugging the terrain to avoid enemy radar. This makes it incredibly difficult to detect and shoot down before it reaches its destination. It is a precision weapon designed to hit specific targets with high accuracy. The key feature of the Tomahawk missile, and the reason it is now at the forefront of international debate, is its extraordinary reach. To put that into perspective, that is the distance from New York City to Dallas, Texas. For Ukraine, this capability would be a game changer. Until now, the weapons supplied by the West have had ranges that limited strikes to areas closer to the Ukrainian border. The Tomahawk erases those limitations, bringing a vast expanse of Russian territory within striking distance. This has not been lost on leaders in Washington and Moscow. The power of the Tomahawk lies not just in its range, but also in its precision. It uses sophisticated guidance systems, including GPS, to navigate its way to a pre-programmed target. This means it can be used to strike military command centers, air defense installations, logistics hubs, critical infrastructure with a high degree of certainty. Unlike less accurate weapons that might cause widespread collateral damage, the Tomahawk is designed for surgical strikes. It is this combination of long-range flight and pinpoint accuracy that makes the potential transfer to Ukraine such a significant and contentious issue on the world stage today. The push for these powerful weapons is coming directly from the top. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been relentless in his pursuit of longer-range capabilities to defend his country. During a recent meeting at the United Nations General Assembly, he made a direct appeal to President Donald Trump. His request was specific and clear: supply Kyiv with Tomahawk long-range cruise missiles. From Ukraine's perspective, the logic is straightforward. The war has settled into a brutal grind, and to break the stalemate, they believe they need to strike sources of Russian aggression far behind the front lines. This request landed in a Washington undergoing a significant policy shift. Less than 2 months ago, the Trump administration focused on diplomatic outreach, culminating in a summit with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. That summit offered economic incentives to Moscow. That summit offered commercial incentives to Moscow. But those efforts failed to gain traction. Now President Trump seems to be adopting a much harder line with Putin. Considering Tomahawks marks a dramatic turn. The administration had previously expressed skepticism about Ukraine's ability to win. The confirmation came from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. On September 28, he said the U.S. is looking at providing Tomahawks to Kyiv. That transformed speculation into a tangible policy option. It suggests the White House may think diplomacy and limited military support are no longer sufficient. For months, Ukrainian forces have struck Russian energy infrastructure. They've hit at least 16 of Russia's 38 major oil refineries. These strikes have occurred since August, resulting in domestic fuel shortages across Russia. Those attacks were carried out with shorter-range drones and missiles. Introducing Tomahawks would amplify the strategy exponentially, allowing Ukraine to systematically target the logistical and economic engines that power Russia's war machine from a much safer distance, forcing Moscow to defend a much larger area. The introduction of Tomahawk missiles would fundamentally redraw the map of the conflict. With a range of 1,500 miles, these weapons would give Ukraine the ability to hold targets at risk deep within the Russian Federation. This is not just a tactical shift, it is a strategic one. For the first time, major Russian cities, including the capital Moscow, would be within the reach of Ukrainian forces. Moscow is located approximately 300 miles from the Ukrainian border. A Tomahawk missile could cover that distance with ease, leaving over 1,000 miles of range to spare. This capability would force a complete recalculation of risk for the Russian leadership. Imagine the strategic implications. Key military bases, command and control centers, logistical supply depots would suddenly become vulnerable. Russian airfields that launch bombers to attack Ukrainian cities could themselves be targeted. The Black Sea Fleet's home ports, even those far from Ukraine, could be threatened. This creates a massive new defensive burden for the Russian military. They would have to reallocate precious air defense systems like the S-400 to protect a vast interior that was previously considered safe from attack. This would inevitably thin out their defenses along the front lines, potentially creating new opportunities for Ukrainian ground forces. This new threat is not just about military targets. As we have seen with Ukraine's recent campaign, energy infrastructure is a primary focus. With Tomahawks, Ukraine could expand its strikes from refineries near the border to critical energy hubs and export terminals deep inside Russia. The US has already approved the sharing of intelligence for Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. Pairing American intelligence with American long-range missiles would create a potent combination. The goal would be to cripple Russia's ability to finance its war effort by disrupting its most vital economic sector. Ultimately, providing Tomahawks is about changing the psychological calculus of the war. It would shift the conflict from something happening over there on the periphery of the Russian Federation to a threat that could be felt in the heart of the country. The air raid sirens that have become a daily reality for Ukrainians could potentially become a reality for Muscovites. This brings the war home to the Russian populace and its political elite in a way that has not happened before. It is a high-risk, high-reward strategy designed to pressure the Kremlin into reconsidering the costs of its invasion. Russia's reaction to the mere discussion of Tomahawks has been swift, angry, and unambiguous. President Vladimir Putin has personally issued a stark warning, calling the supply a completely new stage of escalation in the conflict between Moscow and Washington. From the Kremlin's point of view, this is not just giving Ukraine a better weapon. It is seen as a direct step by the United States toward deeper involvement. Putin's language signals a critical red line with severe and unpredictable consequences for international security. A key part of Russia's argument is the operational complexity of the Tomahawk system. Kremlin officials insist the missiles cannot be used effectively without direct American involvement. Peskov asked, "Can only Ukrainians launch them? Or do American soldiers have to do that?" Putin: "Using Tomahawks without direct participation of American military personnel is impossible." The transfer is portrayed not as aid but as a direct US attack on Russia. Moscow outlined a two-pronged response. First, on a conventional level, we will simply shoot them down and improve our air defense system. Russia says it will strengthen the protective umbrella around sensitive sites and around major cities. A massive undertaking that would divert resources from the front. The message: military resolve, not intimidation. Beyond the conventional, officials issued more ominous threats. Medvedev warned further US interference could lead to war involving weapons of mass destruction. A veiled but clear reference to Russia's nuclear arsenal. The potential transfer of Tomahawk missiles is not happening in a vacuum. It is part of a broader, more complex strategy. New capabilities, carefully defined limits. President Trump has reportedly signed off on sharing United States intelligence to help Ukraine target Russian energy infrastructure. This is a significant step. Targeting data from the Pentagon, targeting data from United States intelligence agencies, makes American involvement more direct. However, there is a crucial caveat. Intelligence sharing is officially limited to attacks on energy infrastructure only, an attempt to place guardrails on how these new capabilities might be used. This highlights the delicate balancing act the United States is trying to perform. On one hand, Washington wants to give Ukraine the power to inflict meaningful costs on Russia, alter the war's trajectory. On the other hand, it is desperate to manage the risk of direct confrontation with a nuclear-armed Russia. By limiting intelligence support to energy targets, the United States may be signaling to Moscow the goal is economic disruption, logistical disruption, not a decapitation strike on the Russian government. Whether the Kremlin would accept that distinction in the heat of conflict remains dangerously open. The real danger: miscalculation, unintended escalation. Russia says Tomahawks with US intelligence, a direct American act of war. If a Tomahawk, guided by US data, hit in or near Moscow, pressure on Putin to respond forcefully would be immense. Putin's warnings of a new stage of escalation, Medvedev's darker hints at unconventional weapons are meant to deter the West. The world would be entering uncharted territory. One side's limited support is the other's direct attack. That's why this Tomahawk debate matters globally. The decision facing President Trump and his administration is among the war's most consequential. Sending missiles could give Ukraine a fighting chance at a breakthrough or force Russia into a costly defensive posture. But it could also trigger a Russian response that spirals into a wider NATO-Russia conflict. The next move is being weighed in Washington. The consequences will be felt globally. The world watches and waits to see if this high-stakes gamble will be taken.